Aside from a little revolution and a small war in 1812, the United States and Britain have been enjoying a solid transatlantic relationship ever since those first fragile days on the shores of Jamestown. But the 400th anniversary of 1607 just might put that friendship to a test.
I think it's maybe surprised the Americans a little bit, and it'll be no harm if there's a little friendly rivalry on the two sides of the Atlantic. Who can really remember this great event best?
Did you know Virginia might not exist at all if it wasn't for this woman's family and their big money gamble centuries ago? CBS 6's Greg McQuaid went to England for her story. Virginia's Roots, tonight on CBS 6 News at 11.
33 and a half hours. Charles Lindbergh on the Spirit of St. Louis.
Every great journey,
Godspeed, John Glenn.
no matter how far the destination or means of transportation, begins simply with money. The Jamestown expedition 400 years ago was no different.
I think it's part of history that we don't know nearly enough about.
Laura Sands beams, knowing her relative literally helped keep the Jamestown expedition floating.
One of my ancestors, Sir Edwin Sands, was one of the first treasurers of the Virginia Company.
Securing the first charter for the Virginia Company from King James I, Sir Edwin tried setting Jamestown on a lucrative course.
If one's looking at it in a more sort of dispassionate view, one would say he was there really to make money.
But money wasn't the only force driving Sands. The flames of democracy also burned intensely. Sir Edwin championed a government run by the people, for the people, in the New World.
In some ways, one could say that he was reasonably instrumental, with all the other settlers, in establishing the first platforms for democracy in America.
Without the efforts of Sir Edwin Sands and the settlers some 4 centuries ago, Laura believes your history books would read much differently. The descendants of the Jamestown explorers living here in England feel a tremendous amount of pride knowing their ancestors played such a pivotal role in establishing the New World, a small settlement that grew to become the United States of America.
With those strong historical ties, I think we can share pride in both what's happened in the United Kingdom and also what's happened in America.
With the 2007 Jamestown anniversary fast approaching, excitement is growing on both sides of the pond.
And we're in the Italian Gardens, which was made by my forebear, Sir Henry Sidney, in about 1560.
Viscount Delisle, Philip Sidney, who owns Penshurst Place in Kent, England, also enjoys strong ties with early Virginia. Sidney's ancestor lent his name to Hampden-Sydney College in Farmville.
I think that the English people have a great affinity with Virginians.
So much so, Viscount Delisle thinks his fellow countrymen and women will embrace the 2007 celebration in Jamestown.
I'm really impressed and pleased from this side of the Atlantic, the amount of enthusiasm there is, and I understand that the enthusiasm is reciprocated by people in Virginia.
Well, of course, it's a sense of great pride.
Nearly 400 years after the founding of Jamestown, our friends in England still hold in high regard the achievements of their namesakes. Without them, who knows how Virginia's history would have unfolded.
Those settlers, they were brave, courageous, going into the unknown, and they were in many ways, one of the founders of America as we know it today.
Somewhere, buried in a graveyard in England, lies evidence that could change the way you look at the founding of America.
The 17th century and the 21st century somehow coming together, I think it really grips the imagination.
Cutting-edge science is helping unravel a mystery spanning 4 centuries and a vast ocean.
Very much a modern-day detective story.
A story involving a monumental figure, a person shortchanged by your history book, but chances are running high you know about his accomplishments.
Bartholomew Gosnell was an entrepreneur. He was an adventurer.
A sea captain who liked pushing the envelope. Bartholomew Gosnell was the man responsible for discovering Jamestown.
He basically sold the idea to people who had money.
His contribution has never been properly assessed, really, to the founding of the colony.
Captain John Smith, Pocahontas, and John Rolfe, three names closely linked to Jamestown, while Gosnell remains but a footnote. Otley Hall in Suffolk, England, the place where Gosnell hatches the plan to go to the New World.
I think it's just been almost completely forgotten.
Catherine Beaumont owns historic Otley and wants the forgotten man to finally get his proper due.
It's a great shame, and I think that he should have his place in history again because he was the prime mover and shaker behind the expedition.
So just how critical was Bartholomew Gosnell to the Jamestown expedition? Well, he interviewed several dozen of the settlers here in this room, including John Smith, to see if they were worthy to go to the New World. Gosnell was at the helm of the Godspeed when the ship set sail from Virginia Key near London in December of 1606.
I think, yes, I mean, he obviously would have been a leader and would have been the leader of the colony.
But Gosnell would not get that chance. The 35-year-old captain died of malaria just a few months after setting foot on what would become Jamestown. It may have taken 400 years, but Bartholomew Gosnell is now moving into the spotlight many people think he so richly deserves.
I think it's Gosnell.
Dr. Bill Kelso, the lead archaeologist at the Jamestown site, and his team believe they've discovered Gosnell's remains. This metal spear-like staff found with the skeleton is helping prove their point.
That was the sign, a symbol of a captain. So we know there's a captain's burial.
But archaeologists need more proof, so now they're turning to science and England for answers.
To confirm that he is Gosnell, they needed family DNA, and not just family DNA, they needed maternal DNA.
The Church of England is greenlighting a project where DNA from the remains of Gosnell's sister will be removed from a grave in Suffolk, England. How exciting is this?
I think it's hugely exciting. I mean, the idea that you might actually be able to put to bed what in effect is a 400-year-old detective story.
Nick Clark with the Church of England says the Gosnell DNA test is the first one allowed for a scientific project.
Science keeps pushing back the boundaries, doesn't it?
Right now, all circumstantial evidence said this is Bartholomew Gosnell. To find the DNA will be, the icing on the cake.
A positive match will also mean a new chapter in your history textbook, recognizing a man whose contributions in founding Jamestown were overlooked and long since forgotten.
Even if it doesn't match, I think it's already succeeded in bringing Gosnell forward.
Being able to categorically say, yes, this is the grave of Captain Bartholomew Gosnell, come 2007, I think will just add enormously to that whole celebration that is going to be monumental your side of the Atlantic and significant our side of the Atlantic.
I'm pounding the pavements of Williamsburg in search of somewhere appropriate for the Queen. Hang on, the locals might have a few ideas.
Anywhere that can cater to her needs.
Yeah, I really don't have any.
Oh, come on, Williamsburg has got loads of hotels.
And she could get a good deal, she's not short of a bob or two. That's English for she's got a lot of money. It's a possibility.
I believe she's staying at the Inn when she arrives, which is one of the nicest hotels in Virginia.
Well, we hope she stays with us at the Inn.
I believe she's staying at the Williamsburg Inn.
Now this is more like it. Very smart, very posh, and Her Majesty might just recognise it.
She stayed in the Williamsburg Inn when she visited 50 years ago, and in fact the suite that she stayed in is still known as the Queen's Suite.
So Queen Elizabeth might lay her head behind these net curtains. There's even a rumour she might be bringing her own carriages.
Well, enough of the horsing around. Your Majesty, we've given you a few choices. The rest is up to you. Mark Norman, CBS News, Jamestown.
Did the sun shine on those first settlers as they landed in the spring of 1607? No doubt they were relieved to get off the tiny boats that brought them from England, but the next few months were anything but plain sailing.
After surviving the crossing from England, they must have been full of hope and expectation and what was to come, but for many, it just wasn't to be.
They were hard at work doing what they were supposed to be doing until about midsummer, when it got real hot and people started dying like flies, and they were in big trouble.
When my fellow Englishmen first arrived, there were 104 of them who set foot on Jamestown Island. A year later, there were just 38. At one point, just a handful were left.
This was a very difficult situation. Death, disease, despair ran amok here in those early years. Leadership at times was very good. Leadership at times was very poor.
They'd arrived as entrepreneurs with some military training, but with their numbers decimated and running out of supplies, they decided to head home.
So they've given up and set sail for England, but on the way out they meet the new Governor de la Warr. He instills a bit of British military discipline. He orders them to reoccupy the settlement, and within a few years it looks something like this.
While many of the settlers never lived to see the Jamestown settlement established, they were still responsible for a significant moment not only in American history, but also in our English history.
If I were an Englishman, I would be very, very excited about this being a 400th anniversary, because this is the first English colony, not in North America, period. And it's the beginning of the British Empire.
So while Americans celebrate this anniversary, perhaps we Brits should also acknowledge the significance of Jamestown.
Suffolk, Norfolk, the Isle of Wight, all Virginian names you recognise, all English names originally. What most people don't realise is there's a small band of Englishmen who want to see Virginia back in English hands. Hi, pint of the brown stuff?
Code words to get to the man in charge of this conspiracy, a Liverpudlian on a mission who's agreed to speak to a BBC reporter. I mean, what's the plan? How are you going to go about this, getting it back?
Well, we just take off a block at a time, you know what I mean? Start off slowly and then just gradually take it over before they realise, and then they know they've got a fight on their hands.
The plan would also include paying English taxes, drinking warm beer, and getting you all to speak the English language properly. Don't worry, folks, you'll love it.
Virginia is more like England and a lot of other states, and it's very green and mountain. So it's, you know, it's a bit of England, you know, already, you know what I mean?
Another pub, another Brit, and more support for the movement.
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. Once you see the Queen, they're going to love her and say, oh yeah, give it back to Britain.
But for some, it's no laughing matter.
No, of course not. We are really two different countries.
If these two gentlemen pull this off, their names would stand alongside some of the greatest British names in history. John Lennon, Winston Churchill, Tommy Goulding, and Terry O'Neill.
Cheers. Slunter. Good out here.
So as you celebrate the 400th anniversary of the founding of your state and our Commonwealth, beware.
We hope you've enjoyed this special presentation. It's been a royal treat for us to present this keepsake video to you. I'm Stephanie Rochon. Thanks for watching.